A red for sale sign stabbed my heart like a knife as I stood frozen. I am Gertrude Schmidt, a 68-year-old Black retired nurse who has just returned to our ancestral church in Savannah to sweep its sacred grounds where my family prayed for generations. But that morning, that sign outside the yard shattered everything. My daughter Vanessa's phone number glared on it. She had secretly placed it to sell our family's legacy, the home my grandmother bought with her toil as a black woman in Georgia, without my consent. I, who worked night shifts for 3 years to fund her college, who gave up love to raise her alone, now faced betrayal from my own blood. My sacrifices crumbled to dust, mocked by her hidden scheme. The Savannah breeze ignored my trembling hands as pain tore through me. How could Vanessa do this? Is she the traitor, or is a darker plot unfolding? This is my story of facing betrayal and reclaiming my life. Dare to join me? Subscribe and share your stories of family secrets below. The Savannah breeze carried the scent of magnolias, but it couldn't soothe the ache in my chest as I stood before the ancestral church, the red for sale sign still glaring at me. I, Gertrude Schmidt, a 68-year-old Black woman who spent decades nursing others back to health, felt my own heart breaking. My hands, still dusted with the earth from sweeping the sacred grounds, trembled as I stared at Vanessa's phone number scrawled on that sign. The house my grandmother bought with her sweat and tears, the place where my family prayed through slavery and segregation, was being sold behind my back. My daughter, my only child, had done this. I sank onto the church steps, the wood creaking under me like it felt my pain. The silence was deafening, broken only by the distant hum of a lawnmower. My mind spiraled back to the nights I worked double shifts at the hospital, my feet aching in worn-out sneakers just to pay for Vanessa's college tuition. I saw her at 6, her gap-toothed grin as I braided her hair before school, promising her the world. I gave up a proposal from a kind doctor, a man who offered me a life of ease because I wanted every moment for her. Now, those sacrifices felt like ashes in my mouth. I pulled my phone from my apron pocket, the same apron I wore to clean this church, its faded flowers a reminder of better days. My thumb hovered over Vanessa's name. I called, my breath shallow, but it went straight to voicemail. "Hey, this is Vanessa. Leave a message." Her voice, so bright and distant, twisted the knife deeper. I tried again. Voicemail. Again. Nothing. My hands shook as I shoved the phone back into my pocket. Was she avoiding me, or was she too ashamed to face what she'd done? The church loomed behind me, its whitewashed walls glowing in the morning light. Inside, I could still hear my mother's voice singing hymns, her hands clapping to the rhythm of hope. This place wasn't just a house. It was our legacy, a testament to my grandmother's resilience as a Black woman in Georgia's cruel past. I'd spent years polishing its pews, dusting the altar, keeping it alive for Vanessa, for her children one day. And now, this sign, a betrayal in red and white, mocked every moment I'd poured into her. I stood, my knees creaking, and walked to the mailbox at the edge of the yard. It was a habit, checking it every morning, hoping for a letter from Vanessa, maybe a card from her new life in Atlanta. Instead, I found a folded piece of paper, no envelope, no name. My fingers hesitated before unfolding it. The words written in sharp, unfamiliar handwriting hit me like a slap. "Check your papers, the sale's already started." My breath caught. The sale's already started. What did that mean? Was Vanessa forging documents, moving behind my back to strip away our family's history? Or was someone else pulling strings using her? The paper crumpled in my fist as I looked around, half expecting to see someone watching from the oak trees lining the street. The air felt heavy, like it held secrets I wasn't ready to face. I thought of the last time Vanessa visited, 6 months ago. She'd sat at my kitchen table, her manicured nails tapping impatiently, talking about her job at the bank, her new apartment. "Mama, you should sell this place," she'd said, her eyes avoiding mine. "It's too much for you now." I'd laughed it off, thinking she was worried about me, an old woman living alone, but now her words echoed like a warning I'd ignored. Had I missed the signs? When did my little girl, who used to draw hearts on my work schedule, become someone who could do this? I clutched the paper tighter, my knuckles aching. The sun climbed higher, but it didn't warm the chill in my bones. I remembered the pink dress I'd bought for Vanessa's college graduation, $150 I couldn't spare, just to see her smile as she walked across that stage. I'd imagined her wearing it again one day, maybe at a family reunion in this very church, with me by her side. Now that dress hung untouched in my closet, a ghost of a dream where I was still her hero. Where had I gone wrong? Had I loved her too much, shielded her from the world's hardness until she forgot what it meant to fight for family? Or had something else changed her, something I couldn't see? The questions gnawed at me, each one sharper than the last. I wanted to scream, to rip that sign from the ground, but my body felt heavy, like the earth itself was holding me down. I turned back to the church, its steeple pointing to a sky that offered no answers. The mailbox paper burned in my hand, a clue to a puzzle I didn't want to solve. Who had written it? Someone who knew about the sale. Someone who wanted me to fight. But fight what? My own daughter? Or something bigger, something darker? I folded the paper and tucked it into my apron, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and resolve. I wasn't ready to confront Vanessa yet, but I couldn't ignore this. Not anymore. As I walked back to my car, the breeze stirred again, whispering through the oaks. I glanced at the sign one last time, its red letters searing into my memory. This wasn't just about a house. It was about trust, about legacy, about the woman I'd been and the one I'd have to become. I didn't know what lay ahead, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let anyone steal my family's story, not even Vanessa. The sting of that red for sale sign lingered like a bruise as I sat at my kitchen table, the crumpled note from the mailbox. "Check your papers, the sale's already started," clutched in my hand. I, Gertrude Schmidt, a 68-year-old black woman who'd poured my life into nursing and raising Vanessa, felt the weight of betrayal settle into my bones. The house was silent, save for the faint creak of the floorboards, as if they too mourned the fracture in my family. Outside, the Savannah dusk wove a tapestry of purples, but inside, my heart was tangled in memories and doubts, each one sharper than the last. I reached for the tin box on the shelf, its edges rusted from holding generations of secrets. Inside lay my grandmother's silver ring, plain but heavy with her struggle, earned through back-breaking work in Georgia's fields. Beside it, my mother's journal, its leather cover worn soft, pages filled with her prayers and dreams. I traced the ring's curve, remembering how I'd promised it to Vanessa, a symbol of our family's resilience. Had she forgotten its worth? Or had she traded our legacy for something as cold as money? My mind drifted to when Vanessa was 10, her laughter echoing as we baked peach cobbler in this very kitchen. I'd work night shifts at the hospital, my hands chapped from disinfectant, just to buy her school books. I'd turned down a marriage proposal from a kind man, a teacher who saw me as more than a single mother, because Vanessa needed me more. Those sacrifices felt sacred then, but now they tasted like dust. When had my little girl, who'd draw stars on my work apron, become someone who'd sell our ancestral church without a word? Where had I failed her? I stood, my joints protesting, and moved to the closet where I kept my important papers. The air smelled of lavender and old wood, a reminder of my mother's shawl draped over a chair nearby. I pulled out the metal lock box, its key cold against my palm. Inside was my will, written years ago after my husband's accident, naming Vanessa as the heir to the church and this house. My fingers trembled as I unfolded it, scanning the familiar lines. But at the bottom, a faint note in fine print caught my eye. Revised. My breath hitched. The signature looked like mine, but it was too perfect, lacking the slight waver of my hand. Someone had altered it. Vanessa. I sank into a chair, the paper trembling in my grip. The room felt tighter, like the walls were whispering accusations. Had I been too soft, too trusting, believing her distance was just a phase? I remembered her last visit, her eyes darting away as she sipped coffee, muttering about her job in Atlanta. "Mama, this house is a lot to maintain," she'd said, her voice clipped. I thought she was worried about me, an old woman alone. Now her words felt like a mask, hiding plans I hadn't seen. The betrayal wasn't just the sign, it was this document, my wishes rewritten by someone I loved. I set the will down, my hands heavy, and walked to the sink. The cold water I splashed on my face did nothing to ease the ache in my chest. Outside, the old oak tree stood sentinel, its branches swaying in the evening breeze. That tree had watched my grandmother pray, my mother sing, and me raise Vanessa. Now it bore witness to my unraveling. I wondered if it held the answers I couldn't find, if it saw the moment my daughter slipped away from me. Needing to move, I stepped onto the porch, the air thick with the scent of jasmine. The mailbox stood at the yard's edge, its faded paint glowing faintly in the twilight. Something urged me to check it again, a nurse's instinct, the kind that told me when a patient's pulse was faltering. I opened it, expecting nothing, but a second folded note waited inside. My heart thudded as I unfolded it. Protect your legacy. 3 words, sharp and urgent, in the same unfamiliar handwriting as the first. I turned the paper over, searching for a hint, a name, a smudge, anything. Nothing. But as I closed the mailbox, my foot sank into soft dirt nearby, revealing a footprint, deep, heavy, not Vanessa's slim heels. My pulse raced. Someone else had been here, someone who knew about the sale, who wanted me to fight. But who? A friend, a stranger, or someone from my past stirring shadows I'd buried long ago? I clutched the note, my mind spinning. The footprint wasn't Vanessa's, but it didn't absolve her. Had she acted alone, driven by some need I didn't understand, or was she caught in a web I couldn't see? I thought of confronting her, demanding the truth, but the thought of another unanswered call stopped me. My heart wasn't ready for more silence. Instead, I stood there, the note pressed against my chest, the oak tree rustling softly. What had Vanessa become? Had I taught her to cherish our history, or had I sheltered her so much she forgot its value? The questions pressed against me, heavy as the Georgia heat. I didn't have answers, but I had these notes, these warnings, and a growing certainty that this fight was bigger than just a house. I tucked the second note into my apron, beside the first, and stared into the darkening street. Someone was out there, watching, waiting, and I needed to know why. The 2 notes, check your papers, the sale's already started. And protect your legacy, burned in my apron pocket as I drove to Esther's office, the weight of a tampered will heavy on my mind. I, Gertrude Schmidt, a 68-year-old black woman who'd spent decades nursing broken bodies, now felt my own spirit fracturing. The Savannah morning was soft, with dew clinging to the grass, but my heart was a storm of doubt and hurt. Vanessa, my daughter, my everything, had altered our family's legacy behind my back. Or had she? The footprint by the mailbox, not hers, gnawed at me, whispering of a bigger shadow. Esther's office smelled of coffee and old paper, a comfort that couldn't ease the knot in my chest. She'd been my friend since our nursing days, her warm eyes always steady, even when mine were clouded with tears. I slid the will across her desk, my fingers brushing the too perfect signature. Esther, tell me I'm wrong, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She adjusted her glasses, her brow furrowing as she studied the document. Minutes passed, each one stretching like an eternity. Then she looked up, her face grim. This isn't your signature, Gertrude. It's traced, too clean. Someone faked it. The words hit like a slap, sharp and cold. My knees buckled, and I gripped the chair, the wood digging into my palms. Vanessa, my Vanessa, forging my will. The girl I'd raised alone, whose fever I'd cooled with damp cloths, whose dreams I'd funded with overtime checks. I saw her at 16, twirling in the dress I'd saved for, $120 I couldn't afford, just to see her shine at her school dance. I'd stood in the shadows, proud, thinking she'd carry our family's strength. Now that memory felt like a lie, a dress left unworn in the closet of my hopes. Where did I go wrong? Had I loved her too fiercely, shielding her from life's edges until she forgot their sharpness? Or had something else twisted her, something I hadn't seen? The silence in Esther's office was suffocating, broken only by the hum of a fan. I stared at the will, its neat lines mocking my trust. Could it be Vanessa? I asked, my voice cracking. Esther hesitated, her hand resting on mine. Maybe, but that footprint you mentioned, it's not her style. She's not sneaky like that. Her words stirred a flicker of doubt, not enough to soothe the ache. I thought of Vanessa's recent visits, her rushed hugs, her eyes glued to her phone. She'd talked about her job at the bank, the pressure, but never the specifics. Was she hiding something, or was she caught in a trap? I needed to know more to dig into her life in Atlanta, but the thought felt like a betrayal of my own. A mother shouldn't spy on her child, yet here I was, forced to question the one I'd given everything for. Esther handed me a tissue, though my eyes were dry, too stunned for tears. Check her recent moves, she said. Bank records, contacts, anything. I'll ask around about that church property. I nodded, but my mind was elsewhere, replaying the nights I'd sat up with Vanessa's homework, my coffee cold, her laughter warm. Had those moments meant nothing? Or was I missing something bigger, something the notes were trying to show me? I left Esther's office, the will tucked back in my purse, its weight heavier than ever. Driving back to the Ancestral church, I felt the pull of its whitewashed walls, the place where my grandmother's prayers had carved a path through pain. I parked and walked the grounds, the grass damp under my shoes. The for sale sign still stood, defiant, Vanessa's number a silent accusation. I wanted to rip it down, but my hands wouldn't move. Instead, I circled the church, searching for answers in its quiet strength. Near the back door, where ivy clung to the wood, I found a third note tucked into a crack in the wall. My heart thudded as I unfolded it. Look closer at her debts. The same sharp handwriting, urgent and knowing. I turned, scanning the empty yard, the oaks standing like witnesses. No one was there, but the air felt charged, like someone had just slipped away. I knelt, checking the ground, and saw it. A fresh footprint, square-toed, pressed deep in the mud. Not Vanessa's. My breath caught. Whoever was leaving these notes knew more than I did, saw more than I could. Were they warning me about Vanessa or something else? Her debts? I remembered her tense voice when she mentioned bills, the way she'd changed the subject. Was she in trouble, drowning in some mess that made her sell our legacy? Or was she the one pulling the strings? The questions swirled, each one a splinter in my heart. I stood, the note trembling in my hand. The church loomed behind me, its steeple cutting into the sky. I thought of my mother, her hands calloused from sewing, her voice steady as she taught me to stand tall. Had I failed to teach Vanessa the same, or was she lost in a storm I couldn't see? The footprint, the notes, the forged will, they pointed to a truth I wasn't ready to face. I tucked the note into my apron next to the others and looked out at the street. The Savannah sun was climbing, but its warmth didn't reach me. Someone was out there, leaving clues, pushing me toward a fight I didn't choose. I didn't know if Vanessa was my enemy or a pawn, but I knew I couldn't stop now. The legacy of my family, the prayers of my grandmother, demanded I keep going. The third note, look closer at her debts, sat heavy in my apron, its words echoing like a pulse as I stood in my kitchen, the Savannah night pressing against the windows. I, Gertrude Schmidt, a 68-year-old black woman who'd stitched together lives as a nurse, now felt my own unraveling. Vanessa, my daughter, had forged my will, her betrayal confirmed by Esther's sharp eyes. The footprint by the church, square-toed and foreign, hinted at someone else watching, but the pain of Vanessa's actions cut deepest. The house was still, the air thick with the scent of old wood and my own fear. I clutched my coffee mug, its warmth gone, and wondered, when did my girl, my heart, turn into someone who'd sell our family's legacy? I dialed Vanessa's number again, my fingers trembling on the phone. The call went to voicemail, her voice bright and careless. "Hey, this is Vanessa. Leave a message." I hung up, the silence louder than ever. I saw her at 8, her tiny hands clutching the quilt I'd sewn for her, the one I'd spent $80 on fabric for, staying up late to stitch love into every square. I dreamed of her wrapping it around her own children one day, here in our ancestral home. Now that quilt lay folded in a closet, untouched, like my trust in her. Had I sheltered her too much, given her everything until she forgot what it cost? The questions choked me, each one a stone in my throat. I paced the kitchen, the linoleum cool under my bare feet, and tried to piece together Vanessa's life in Atlanta. She'd mentioned stress, bills piling up, but always brushed it off with a laugh. Was she hiding something, or was I too blind to see her struggle? I needed answers, not more notes from a stranger. I thought of Clara, my old friend from church, who worked at a bank downtown. She'd always had a knack for seeing through people's masks, her eyes sharp as the pins in her Sunday hat. I called Clara, my voice unsteady. "I need a favor," I said, explaining Vanessa's distance, the forged will, the notes. She listened, her silence kind but heavy. "I'll look into her finances," she promised. "Meet me tomorrow at the bank." I thanked her, but as I hung up, the quiet returned, wrapping me in doubt. I sat at the table, staring at the notes, their handwriting sharp like a warning. Who was leaving them? Someone who knew Vanessa's secrets, someone pushing me to dig deeper. The next morning I drove to the bank, the Savannah air thick with humidity. Clara's office was small, cluttered with files and a single potted plant wilting in the corner. She greeted me with a hug, her perfume sharp and floral, but her face was grim. "Gertrude, Vanessa's in deep," she said. sliding a folder across her desk. She owes over 50 grand to a company called Coastal Properties. They're pressuring her hard. My stomach dropped. $50,000? I saw Vanessa at her college graduation, her cap tilted, my $200 gift for her new apartment tucked in a card I'd spent hours choosing. I thought she was set, thriving. How had she fallen so far? Clara leaned forward, her voice low. This company, they're shady. They target folks with valuable property and push them into bad deals. Vanessa's name is tied to a loan, and your church is listed as collateral. My breath caught, the room spinning. Collateral? Our ancestral church, where my grandmother sang through her pain, was just a bargaining chip to some faceless company. I gripped the folder, my knuckles aching, and felt the weight of Vanessa's choices. Had she sold our legacy to save herself? Or was she trapped too? I drove home, Clara's words ringing in my ears. The sky was heavy, clouds promising rain, but my mind was darker. I thought of the nights I'd taught Vanessa to balance a checkbook, her teenage sighs filling the kitchen. Had I failed to teach her strength, or had life in Atlanta broken her? The questions gnawed at me, relentless. I pulled into my driveway, the ancestral church a shadow in the distance, its for sale sign glowing like a wound. As I stepped out, my eyes caught a glint across the street, a black sedan, its windows tinted, idling under an oak. My heart thudded. It was the same car I'd seen before, lurking near the church. I froze, my hand on the car door, the air thick with the scent of coming rain. Was it Coastal Properties watching me? Or the note writer keeping tabs? The car didn't move, but its presence felt like a threat, a shadow I couldn't shake. I hurried inside, locking the door behind me. The house felt smaller, the walls pressing in with secrets. I sank onto the couch, Clara's folder still in my hand, its pages heavy with numbers I couldn't unsee. Vanessa's debt was real, a chain tying her to this betrayal. But was she the mastermind or just a pawn? I thought of her laughter, how it used to light up this house, now replaced by silence and lies. Where had I gone wrong? Had I raised her to be strong, or had I loved her into weakness? The sedan's engine hummed faintly outside, a reminder that I wasn't alone in this. Someone was out there, watching, maybe waiting for me to break, but I wouldn't, not yet. I needed to know more about Vanessa's debts, about Coastal Properties, about the stranger leaving notes. The fight for my family's legacy was growing, and I was caught in its center, a mother torn between love and truth. The black sedan's shadow lingered in my mind as I walked the grounds of the ancestral church, the weight of Vanessa's debt, and the mysterious notes pressing against my heart. I, Gertrude Schmidt, a 68-year-old black woman who'd nursed countless souls through pain, now felt my own soul fraying. Clara's revelation about Vanessa's $50,000 debt to Coastal Properties had shaken me, but the idea that she was a pawn, not a mastermind, stirred a new ache. The Savannah dawn was quiet, the air thick with the scent of wet earth, but my thoughts were loud, tangled with questions. Had I raised Vanessa to fall into such traps, or had I missed the moment she lost her way? I circled the church, its whitewashed walls glowing faintly under the rising sun. The for sale sign stood defiant, a reminder of my daughter's betrayal, but the notes hinted at something bigger. I needed more than warnings on paper. I needed proof. My shoes sank into the soft grass as I approached the back door, where ivy curled like fingers clutching secrets. There, half buried in the dirt, I spotted a glint, a small rusted key. I knelt, my knees protesting, and picked it up. It was old, its edges worn, but it fit the lock on the church's back door, a door I rarely used. My heart thudded as I turned the key, the lock clicking open with a groan. Inside, the air was cool, smelling of dust and old hymnals. I scanned the dim room, my eyes catching a folded note tucked into a crack in the wall near the altar. My fingers trembled as I unfolded it. She's not alone. Check her emails. The same sharp handwriting, urgent and knowing, sent a chill through me. Vanessa wasn't acting alone. The words shifted something inside, turning my anger into worry. Was she trapped, manipulated by someone like this, Coastal Properties? I sat on a pew, the wood creaking under me, and clutched the note. The church was silent, but memories flooded in. I saw Vanessa at 15 sitting in this very pew, her head bowed as I taught her our family's prayers. I'd spent $90 on a Bible for her, its leather cover embossed with her name, hoping it would guide her. I'd thought she'd carry our faith, our history. Now that Bible sat untouched in her old room like my love abandoned. Had I given her too much, making her soft to the world's schemes? Or had I not given enough, leaving her vulnerable? The questions burned, each one a spark in my chest. I needed to see those emails to understand who was pulling Vanessa's strings. Back home, I hesitated before opening my laptop. A mother shouldn't pry into her child's life, but the forged will, the debt, the notes, they left me no choice. Vanessa had once shared an old email account with me, a backup from her college days. I logged in, my hands shaking, and found a chain of messages from a James Carter at Coastal Properties. "Sign the papers, Vanessa," one read. "Your debt's due. The church will cover it." Another was colder. "Don't tell your mother. She'll only make this harder." My breath caught, the screen blurring. James Carter, a name, a face to the shadow. He was pushing Vanessa, using her debt to steal our legacy. The emails painted her as desperate, not cruel, caught in a web she couldn't escape. I saw her at 20, moving to Atlanta, my $200 farewell gift tucked in her purse, her smile bright with dreams. Had those dreams led her to this? I wanted to call her, to scream or cry, but my voice stayed locked in my throat. I closed the laptop, the room heavy with silence. The key from the church lay on the table, its rust catching the light. Who had left it there, with the note? Someone who knew Carter's game, who wanted me to see the truth. I stepped outside, needing air, and froze. Across the street, the black sedan was back, its engine idling, windows dark. My pulse raced, the air sharp with the scent of rain-soaked leaves. Was it Carter watching to see if I'd break, or the note writer guarding me from the shadows? I stood on my porch, the key in one hand, the note in the other. The sedan didn't move, but its presence felt like a weight, pressing me to act. I thought of my grandmother, her hands scarred from picking cotton, her prayers filling this church. She'd fought for this place, for us. I couldn't let it fall to a man like Carter or to Vanessa's mistakes. But was she a victim, or had she chosen this path? The emails showed her fear, but they didn't erase her silence, her secrecy. Where had I gone wrong? Had I taught her to stand tall, or had I shielded her until she crumbled under pressure? The questions clung to me, heavy as the Georgia humidity. I looked at the church in the distance, its steeple a quiet sentinel. The notes, the key, the sedan, they were pieces of a puzzle I didn't fully understand. Someone was out there, leaving clues, pushing me toward a truth I feared. I needed to know if Vanessa was lost to me, or if I could still save her. I tucked the note into my apron beside the others and gripped the key tightly. The sedan's engine revved softly, then it pulled away, disappearing into the dawn. My heart pounded, not with strength, but with a desperate need to protect what was mine. My family's legacy, my daughter's soul. The fight was growing, and I was standing at its edge, a mother caught between love and fear. The rusted key and the note. She's not alone. Check her emails. He weighed heavily in my pocket as I prepared dinner, the scent of cornbread filling my Savannah kitchen. I, Gertrude Schmidt, a 68-year-old black woman who'd nursed others through their darkest hours, now faced my own. The emails from James Carter pressuring Vanessa to sell our ancestral church had shifted my anger to worry. My daughter was trapped, but her silence, her part in this betrayal, still stung. The house was quiet, the air thick with the hum of cicadas outside, but my heart churned with questions. Had I raised Vanessa to be so easily swayed, or had I missed the cracks in her strength? I set the table for two, my hands trembling as I placed the cornbread beside a jar of honey, her favorite since she was a girl. I'd invited Vanessa over, my voice steady on the phone despite the ache in my chest. She'd agreed, hesitant, her words clipped. I saw her at 12, smearing honey on her fingers, giggling as I scolded her gently. I'd spent $30 on that jar, a treat for her birthday, thinking those moments would bind us forever. Now, the honey sat untouched, like the trust I'd poured into her, wasted on a table set for truth. When Vanessa arrived, her heels clicked on the porch, her face tight with unease. She wore a crisp blazer, her Atlanta life clinging to her like a mask. "Mama," she said, her smile thin, "this smells good." I nodded, my throat tight, and gestured to the chair. The silence between us was heavy, broken only by the clink of forks. I waited, letting the quiet stretch until I couldn't hold it anymore. "Vanessa," I said, my voice low, "why didn't you tell me about Coastal Properties, about the debt?" Her fork froze, her eyes wide. How did you? She started, then stopped, her hands dropping to her lap. I slid my laptop across the table, the screen open to Carter's emails. I saw these, I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my heart. You were going to sell the church, our legacy, to pay your debts. Her face crumpled, tears spilling as she whispered, Mama, I didn't want to hurt you. She confessed, her voice breaking. Carter had lured her with promises of clearing her $50,000 debt if she signed over the church. I was drowning, she said, bills piling up, my job not enough. He said it was just business, that you'd never know. Each word was a knife cutting through the love I'd built for her. I saw her at 18, her graduation cap askew, my $100 gift for her dorm room tucked in a card I'd chosen with care. I'd thought she'd soar, not sink into this mess. Had I given her too much, leaving her unprepared for life's weight? The room felt smaller, the air thick with her sobs and my pain. You forged my will, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. You went behind my back. Vanessa shook her head, tears streaming. I didn't forge it, Mama. Carter gave me papers, said they were legal. I was scared. Her words hung between us, a fragile thread of hope. Was she a victim manipulated by a predator, or had she chosen this path? The notes, the key, the sedan, they pointed to Carter, but her silence was her own. I leaned back, the chair creaking, and looked at her. My daughter, but a stranger now. You have a chance to fix this, I said, my voice firm but soft. Help me stop him. She nodded, wiping her eyes, her hands shaking. I'll do anything, Mama. I'm so sorry. I wanted to believe her, but trust was a wound still bleeding. We agreed to work together to expose Carter, but my heart ached with the cost of this pact. A mother shouldn't have to bargain with her child for truth. Where had I gone wrong? Had I loved her too fiercely, making her weak to the world's schemes? Or had I not loved her enough, leaving her to face them alone? The questions pressed against me, heavy as the night outside. I thought of my grandmother, her hands rough from toil, her prayers filling the church. She'd fought for us, for this legacy. I couldn't let it fall, not to Carter, not to Vanessa's mistakes. As Vanessa left, promising to gather evidence, I stepped onto the porch, the air cool and sharp with the scent of rain. I checked the mailbox, half expecting it to be empty, but a fifth note waited, tucked inside. My heart thudded as I unfolded it. Trust her. The same sharp handwriting, urgent and cryptic, sent a shiver through me. I looked around, the street dark, the oak silent. Whoever was leaving these notes believed in Vanessa's redemption. But could I? I knelt by the mailbox, my fingers brushing the earth, and found another footprint, square-toed deep, like the others. My pulse raced. Someone was still watching, guiding me from the shadows. Was it a friend or someone with their own agenda? The note's words echoed, urging me to trust, but trust felt like a luxury I couldn't afford. Vanessa's tears were real, but so was her betrayal. I stood, the note in my hand, the church a faint silhouette in the distance. The fight for our legacy was growing, and I was caught in its heart, torn between saving my daughter and protecting what my grandmother had built. The notes, the footprint, Carter's emails, they were pieces of a puzzle, but the picture was still blurred. I needed to know who was helping me and why they hid. The fifth note, trust her, lay folded in my apron as I sat in the Savannah library, my heart pounding like a drum. I, Gertrude Schmidt, a 68-year-old black woman who'd nursed broken souls, now faced a battle to save my daughter Vanessa and our ancestral church. Her tearful confession, the emails from James Carter, and the mysterious notes had led to this moment. A plan to trap the man who'd manipulated her into betraying our legacy. The library was quiet, its air heavy with the scent of old books, but my mind was a storm of fear and doubt. Had I raised Vanessa to fall so easily, or had I failed to see her struggles? Clara, my friend from church, sat beside me, her hand steady as she adjusted the hidden recorder in her purse. Vanessa was across town, meeting Carter under the pretense of signing over the church. I'd coached her to play the part, to draw out his truth, but my heart ached at the thought of her facing him alone. I saw her at 7, clutching the rag doll I'd made her, $25 spent on fabric when I barely had enough for groceries. I'd sewn love into every stitch, believing it would hold us together. Now, that doll sat forgotten in her old room like the bond I'd thought unbreakable. The library's clock ticked, each second stretching my nerves. Clara whispered, "She'll be okay, Gertrude. She's tough like you." But I wasn't so sure. Vanessa's tears had been real, her regret heavy, but her silence for so long still stung. Had I sheltered her too much, leaving her prey to men like Carter? Or had I not given enough, letting her drift into desperation? The questions clawed at me, relentless, as I stared at the phone, waiting for Vanessa's signal. The plan was simple but risky. Vanessa would meet Carter at a cafe, offer to sign the papers, and get him to admit his scheme. Clara's recorder would capture every word, and Evelyn, a lawyer I'd contacted through Esther, would be ready to act. But sitting here, hidden behind a stack of books, I felt the weight of what we were doing. A mother shouldn't have to trap her child's predator, shouldn't have to doubt her own flesh and blood. The library's silence was deafening, broken only by the rustle of pages and my own uneven breaths. My phone buzzed, Vanessa's text flashing. "He's talking." My heart lurched. I imagined her at the cafe, her hands shaking as she faced Carter. I saw her at 20, her eyes bright as I handed her $150 for her first apartment, dreaming she'd build a life of her own. Had that dream led her to this, to a man who saw our church as a paycheck? The thought burned a fire in my chest I couldn't douse. Clara played the recorder's live feed, Carter's voice low and smug. "The church is worth millions, Vanessa," he said. "Your mama's too old to know its value. I forged the will and got your signature on the loan. Easy money." My blood ran cold, his words confirming the note's warnings. He'd used Vanessa's debt, her fear, to steal our legacy. She murmured agreement, her voice shaky but steady, playing her role. "So, I sign, and my debt's clear?" she asked. Carter laughed, a sound that made my skin crawl. "Exactly. Your mama won't even notice." I gripped Clara's arm, my nails digging in. The library felt smaller, the air thick with betrayal. Carter's confession was the proof we needed, but it didn't ease the ache. Vanessa had been a pawn, but she'd still chosen to hide the truth from me. Where had I gone wrong? Had I taught her to trust too easily, or not enough? I thought of my grandmother, her hands scarred from toil, her prayers echoing in the church. She'd fought for that place, and now I was fighting too. For her, for Vanessa, for myself. Evelyn arrived, her briefcase clicking open as she listened to the recording. "This is enough," she whispered, her eyes sharp. "We can stop him now." She called the police who were waiting nearby, and I felt a tremor of relief, but it was fleeting. Vanessa was safe, but the wound of her silence remained. I saw her at 13, her face lit up as I bought her a $50 journal to write her dreams, believing they'd carry her far. Had those dreams led her to Carter, or had I failed to guide her? As we left the library, the Savannah evening was cool, the sky bruised with clouds. I glanced at the Ancestral church across the street, its steeple steady against the dusk. The for sale sign still stood, but Carter's confession meant it wouldn't for long. Yet the victory felt hollow. Vanessa had helped us, but her betrayal lingered, a scar I couldn't ignore. Outside, I noticed a small camera nestled in the oak tree by the church, its lens glinting faintly. My heart skipped. The note writer had been here, recording Carter's meeting, leaving proof I hadn't seen. I froze, the air sharp with the scent of rain-soaked grass. Who was this shadow? Watching, helping. Their notes had led me to this moment, but their silence unnerved me. Were they friend, or did they have their own plans? The camera's presence raised more questions than answers. Vanessa was free of Carter, but could I trust her to stay true? The church was safe for now, but the fight wasn't over. I stood under the oak, the camera above me, feeling the weight of my grandmother's legacy. I wasn't strong yet, just a mother torn between love and loss, but I couldn't stop. Someone was out there guiding me, and I needed to know why. The camera in the oak tree haunted me as I stood in my Savannah kitchen, the weight of James Carter's confession still heavy on my heart. I, Gertrude Schmidt, a 68-year-old black woman who'd nursed others through pain, now grappled with my own. Vanessa's tears, her promise to make things right, and the trap we'd set for Carter had saved our ancestral church, but the notes, those cryptic guides, lingered like ghosts. Who had been watching, leaving clues in the shadows? The house was quiet, the air thick with the scent of cooling cornbread, but my mind churned with doubt. Had I failed Vanessa, letting her fall into Carter's web, or had I missed the signs of her struggle? I sat at the table, my hands tracing the grain of the wood, and thought of my mother, her fingers worn from sewing, her voice steady as she taught me faith. I'd spent $40 on a hymn book for Vanessa when she was 9, hoping she'd sing those same songs, carry our family's strength. Now, that book sat dusty on a shelf, like my belief in her. The silence was heavy, broken only by the tick of the clock, each second a reminder of the stranger who'd helped me. I needed to know who they were, why they cared. A knock at the door startled me, soft but insistent. I hesitated, my heart thudding, and peered through the curtain. An older man stood on the porch, his face familiar yet distant, like a memory half forgotten. I opened the door, the evening air cool against my skin. "Gertrude," he said, his voice low. "It's Isaiah from the old days." Isaiah, my childhood friend who'd worked the fields with my grandmother, who'd once asked me to a dance I'd turned down for Vanessa's sake. His eyes, lined with age, held a quiet sorrow. "I left the notes," he said, stepping inside. My breath caught. He explained, his words slow, deliberate. He'd seen Carter's men sniffing around the church, heard rumors of their scams targeting elders. "I knew your grandmother's story," he said, "how she fought for that place. I couldn't let it happen again." He'd placed the camera, left the notes, and stayed hidden to avoid Carter's wrath. "I didn't want you to feel alone," he added, his voice breaking. I stood frozen, the weight of his kindness sinking in. The room felt smaller, the air thick with the scent of jasmine from the open window. I saw Vanessa at 6, her tiny hand in mine as we walked past Isaiah's house, his wave warm and familiar. I'd spent $20 on ice cream that day, her laughter sweeter than the treat. Had I been so focused on her that I'd missed allies like him? Where had I gone wrong raising a daughter who'd hide her pain while others fought for me? The questions stung, each one a needle in my heart. I offered Isaiah a seat, pouring coffee into chipped mugs. "Why not tell me sooner?" I asked, my voice soft but raw. He sighed, his hands rough from years of labor. "You needed to find the truth yourself, Gertrude. To see Vanessa's heart, not just her mistakes." His words hit hard, stirring memories of my grandmother's prayers, her belief that truth heals. I wanted to be angry, to demand why he'd stayed in the shadows, but gratitude overwhelmed me. He'd guarded my legacy when I couldn't. We talked for hours, the coffee growing cold. Isaiah told me of others Carter had swindled, elders who'd lost homes, legacies. Vanessa was helping now, working with Evelyn to ensure Carter faced justice, his company barred from operating. The for sale sign was gone, the church safe, but the ache remained. Vanessa's regret was real, but her silence had cut deep. I thought of my mother, her hands folding laundry as she taught me forgiveness. Had I taught Vanessa enough, or had I loved her into fragility? As Isaiah left, promising to check in, I stepped onto the porch, the night air sharp with the scent of rain-soaked earth. The oak tree stood sentinel, its camera gone, removed by Isaiah after Carter's fall. I felt lighter, but not whole. Vanessa was trying, volunteering at a community center to help others avoid scams, but trust was a wound still healing. I saw her at 16, her eyes bright as I gave her a $70 necklace for her birthday, dreaming she'd shine. Had that dream led her astray, or had I failed to guide her? I walked to the church, its walls glowing under the moon. Inside, the pews were silent, but they held my family's prayers, their strength. I sat, my hands tracing the worn wood, and felt my grandmother's presence. She'd fought for this place, and now I had too, with help I hadn't expected. Isaiah's notes had been a lifeline, but his silence left questions. Was he driven by guilt, love, or something else? His past with my family ran deep, but what did he want now? The church's quiet wrapped around me, a comfort and a challenge. Vanessa was on a path to redemption, but could I walk it with her? The fight for our legacy had won us a battle, but the war for trust was unfinished. I stood, my heart heavy with love and loss, and looked at the altar. Someone had fought for me, but the cost of betrayal lingered. I needed to know if Isaiah's help was selfless, or if another shadow waited. The Ancestral church stood quiet under the Savannah sun, its whitewashed walls glowing with a peace I hadn't felt in months. I, Gertrude Schmidt, a 68-year-old black woman who'd nursed hearts and bodies, stood on its steps, the weight of Isaiah's revelation and Vanessa's redemption heavy in my chest. Carter was gone, his schemes exposed, the for sale sign removed, but the scars of betrayal lingered. The air was thick with the scent of magnolias, but my heart still ached with questions. Had I failed Vanessa, letting her drift into Carter's trap, or had I missed the strength she could find? I walked inside, the pews cool under my touch, and sat, my hands tracing the worn wood. The church was more than a building. It was my grandmother's prayers, my mother's songs, my life's anchor. I decided to turn it into a community center, a place to preserve our Black heritage, with Vanessa as its caretaker if she proved her heart. The decision felt right, but doubt gnawed at me. I saw Vanessa at 10, her eyes wide as I gave her a $60 locket for Christmas, its tiny heart holding our love. That locket sat unworn now, like the trust I was trying to rebuild. The silence was heavy, broken only by the creak of the floorboards. I thought of my mother, her hands steady as she taught me to knead dough, her voice firm. Hold what's yours, Gertrude. Had I held Vanessa too tightly or not tightly enough? Her work at the community center helping elders avoid scams showed promise, but her silence had cut deep. Could I trust her again, or was I clinging to a hope that would break me? The questions pressed against me, each one a weight I couldn't shake. Outside, I tended the church's garden, planting marigolds, their golden petals bright against the earth. The act felt sacred, like honoring my grandmother's toil. I'd spent $25 on those seeds, a small price for beauty, believing they'd bloom as Vanessa once did. But her betrayal, even if manipulated, lingered like a shadow. Had I raised her to value our legacy, or had I shielded her until she forgot its cost? The marigolds swayed in the breeze, offering no answers, only quiet. Vanessa visited that afternoon, her steps hesitant on the church steps. "Mama," she said, her voice soft. "I'm trying." Her eyes, red from tears, held a flicker of the girl I'd raised. We sat on a bench, the air warm with the scent of blooming flowers. She spoke of her work, of helping an old man save his home from a scammer like Carter. I listened, my heart torn between pride and pain. I saw her at 14, her hands clutching the $80 coat I'd bought for her first winter in Atlanta, her smile my reward. Had that smile hidden her fears, or had I missed them? I took her hand, her fingers cold despite the heat. "This church," I said, "it's ours, but only if you honor it." She nodded, tears falling. "I will, Mama." I wanted to believe her, but trust was a fragile thread, stretched thin by her choices. The community center was my gift to her, to us, but also to others, a place where stories like my grandmother's could live. Yet Isaiah's help, his hidden notes, left a question unanswered. Why had he stayed silent so long? Was his kindness pure, or did it carry a debt I didn't see? I walked home, the Savannah dusk painting the sky in pinks. My porch swing creaked as I sat, a mug of tea cooling in my hands. The quiet was different now, not heavy with fear, but soft, like a pause before a new song. I thought of my grandmother, her hands scarred from picking cotton, her faith unyielding. I'd fought for her legacy, but the fight had changed me. I wasn't just a mother, not just a nurse. I was a woman who'd faced betrayal and found a way forward. But where had I gone wrong with Vanessa? Had I loved her into weakness, or had life's weight bent her? The next morning, I joined the church choir, my voice blending with others in a hymn my mother loved. The notes rose, filling the space with hope, and for the first time I felt a flicker of peace. I saw Vanessa at 17 singing beside me, her voice clear and strong. I'd spent $50 on sheet music for her, dreaming she'd carry our songs. Now she was finding her voice again, but could it last? The choir's harmony wrapped around me, a reminder that I wasn't alone. Neighbors stopped by, bringing pies and stories, their laughter a balm. I realized the community center wasn't just for Vanessa, it was for them, for us, a place to hold our history. But Isaiah's shadow lingered. His help had saved us, but his silence, his past with my family, left me uneasy. Had he acted out of love, or was there something he hadn't said? The question hung, a faint cloud in my sky. As I stood on the church steps, the marigolds blooming brightly, I felt my grandmother's strength. The fight for our legacy had taught me I could survive betrayal, but not without scars. Vanessa was trying, but trust was a slow bloom, like the flowers I'd planted. I wasn't strong yet, just a woman carrying love and loss, but I was here, standing. The church was ours, a beacon for others, but Isaiah's motives remained a mystery, a final piece I needed to understand. This journey taught me that betrayal, even from the ones we hold closest, doesn't break us. It forges our strength. I am Gertrude Schmidt, a 68-year-old Black retired nurse, and I've learned that protecting our family's legacy isn't just about keeping a house. It's about standing tall for the truth and love that define us. Vanessa's choice to sell our ancestral home cut deep, tearing at the sacrifices I made, night shifts, missed dreams, a heart given wholly to her. But through the pain, I found courage, inspired by my mother's fight to preserve our home against schemers long ago. I fought not just for the walls my grandmother built with her toil, but for Vanessa's redemption and my own peace. I learned that we can rise from heartbreak, choosing to rebuild with hope, not bitterness. Your worth isn't in what others take, but in what you choose to hold, your roots, your truth, your heart. Now, it's me, your storyteller, reaching out. This story of resilience and healing is for you. So if it moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe to join our journey. Have you ever faced a betrayal that shook your world, forcing you to find strength you didn't know you had? What kept you standing? Share your stories in the comments. I read every one, and they mean the world. Stay tuned for more stories that remind us we're never alone in our struggles. Thank you for being here from the bottom of my heart. Your presence makes these stories live on. See you soon.